quite a treat for you. We have Kiki Layne herself here to do a Q&A. If she's, I can't see anything. Oh, she's right here. Hello. Oh, God. Kiki! How'd you guys like the film? Yeah? Okay. So, Kiki, you are a Cincinnati girl yourself. I would love to hear how you sort of brought your own relationship to the city, to the film and your character.
I mean, it was definitely one of the things that made me excited about doing this movie, playing a character from Cincinnati. And I think, I really just got to pour a lot of my personal relationship, to my hometown into the movie, and especially the music. The song Over the Rhine was called Goes to Cincinnati in the film, but post-production we changed it to Over the Rhine. That song is about an area in Cincinnati that has been heavily gentrified, and so I was able to pour my own personal experience of watching that neighborhood change into the music and into the film. And I'm just super grateful that Nicole and the Desners made space for me to contribute, to the music in such a personal way.
And you learned guitar for this, or were you already sort of partially on guitar?
I learned to act like I play guitar. No, thankfully we had an amazing guitar teacher, Noah Harmon, who also, ended up becoming our music supervisor, just because he was so hands-on in all the creation of the music. But anytime that I am playing guitar in this film, it is actually Noah playing, and I am just up there essentially playing Guitar Hero. Yep.
I believed it. I don't know anything about guitar. I do live with 3 guitars, but I don't know how to play any of them. But I love the part that when you're bringing the guitar and you're selling like your child. That's so beautiful and painful for a guitar player. I wanted to ask how you said Cincinnati being part of it was what brought you sort of excitement for the character, but how did you first sort of get involved with this film?
They sent me the script, and I just really connected to Dandelion's journey as an artist. I think it's something that I really could just relate to, some of the questions that she was asking herself about, like, is there space for her? Is there space for who she is as an artist? I definitely have wrestled with those questions and continue to wrestle with those types of questions. And I think that just really resonated with me. And then, of course, it being my hometown, I'm like, ooh, I get to shoot a movie at home, which has its pros. It has its cons. But, I read the script, and then I spoke to Nicole and just, got to hear more of her vision for the film, and it just made me really excited to be a part of it.
Were there ever moments in your own career where you felt like you saw people going ahead and you had reasons that you couldn't catch up with them?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's a part of, the journey of an artist. There's only, being an actor, only one person can win the role. And you get a lot more no's than you do yeses. And so I've definitely had to wrestle with that. And that's why I felt so connected to this character and could pour so much of myself into the role, because I know what so many of those feelings that we see Dandelion going through, I know what so much of that is.
And you are also a DePaul alum, correct?
Okay, Blue Demons, yes.
Do you feel like part of that program really gave you the tools to go and be this big star that you are?
I mean, it definitely laid the foundation of my technique, and also me becoming more aware of like who I am and what some of my habits are and what some pieces of like my comfort zone, what those things are. And I think DePaul kind of helped me to develop a bit more of an awareness of that. So then as I approach roles, I can be a bit more aware of like, is that Kiki or is that the role? And like, what parts of myself, because I mean, we have to bring pieces of ourselves to it. That's the only way to like really connect. But it's like, what pieces of myself actually make sense, in this role? And I think this was kind of interesting to navigate that because there are so many similarities between myself and Dandelion, but like I had to catch myself of like, okay, sure, Kiki likes, this version of this song, but is that actually Dandelion? And kind of like trying to learn to manage that. So I think DePaul kind of got me on the track of asking those types of questions.
Speaking of the line between Dandelion and Kiki, I love that suit you wear at the end. Was it a Dandelion choice or a Kiki choice, or the fit is unbeatable?
No, that was our costume designer, Michael. I mean, as soon as they showed me that suit, I was like, that's it, because one of the through lines of Dandelion's costumes is that she's often in some hue of red. And then when she meets Casey, he's more in blues. And so you see her starting to absorb some of his blues. And so it was nice to see that by the end, she's in like the boldest version of red, which is like a hot pink suit from Zara. And I loved that it was from Zara, because I'm like, I know that's right, Dandelion. Okay. I know she shops at Zara, and she spent, because that's definitely like over 100, because Zara has some pieces that's like Zara. Like, what are we doing with this budget? But it felt really right for her.
So I'm gonna ask one last question, and then we're gonna throw it to the audience, and there's going to be a mic over on that side, not where? Right there, down the second aisle. But my last question I wanted to ask you, you've done drama, Beale Street, you've done sci-fi, you've done action, one of my mom's favorite action movies. You've done comedy. Now you've done a rock and roll music film. Is there anything you can't do?
I can do anything that I put my mind to.
Fantastic. If you have audience questions, please line up over there. Are you going to do a Western?
I would love to do a Western.
Because I would love to see you in a Western.
I get to ride a horse and like, pew, pew.
We'll find you a Western.
I also just have to like really just shout out this crowd. It feels amazing to be back in Chicago. I lived here for 8 years. This is where I got my start as an artist, and I learned so much about myself and like the type of artist that I wanted to be from being a part of this community. So like it means so much to me to be back here and just to be sharing with people who saw me when I could not execute a role like this, okay? For to be in an audience with people who are, witnessing the growth, have supported me throughout this growing journey, and I just want to say thank you.
Hi. Can you tell us what it was like shooting the scene with the prairie dogs at the prairie dog farm?
I almost asked that.
Okay, so this is a very tiny budget indie film, okay? So there are a specific type of peanuts, okay, that prairie dogs like. We did not have those peanuts. I think it's either they like salted and we had unsalted, or like the other way around. So in all honesty, they were not having it with us. They're like, these are not our type of peanuts. We don't know why y'all are here. So the like moments where we actually got one of them to come to us was like a miracle. So it was fun, but it was also like, wow, we are really janky for having the wrong peanuts.
Thank you.
Hi, I don't even know where to begin. Amazing film. I usually like to go into these member screenings blind, like I don't do any homework on the movie. But, so I didn't know like the Cincinnati thing. Like I lived in Columbus for 13 years and I love Cincinnati. I was just there last fall for the Nationals Homecoming Festival. And the Nationals is my favorite band. But again, I went into this blind and the Desners are like, they do too many things for me to like keep up with everything they're doing. So I didn't know that they were involved with this until I saw the credits. And anyway, I have so many questions about the film, but what was it like? So I'm just going to limit to this. What was it like working with the Dessners? And like, you got to write songs with somebody who's written songs with somebody who's pretty famous right now. What was that whole thing like?
I mean, it was amazing to collaborate with the Dessners and Nicole. I'm super grateful for how open they were to allowing me to pour more of myself into the music, because, you know, some of the first conversations that I had to have with them was just acknowledging the fact that, you know, the Dessners are two white men in their mid-40s, but this music, now that Dandelion is being portrayed by a 30-year-old Black woman, there was a disconnect in what might come out of Dandelion's soul and spirit and mind now that a 30-year-old Black woman was playing her. And so one of the first conversations we had, I said to them, I said, well, I know that she's like, an indie folk singer. I said, but my folk look a little different than y'all folk. And so we have to acknowledge that, and we had to make space to bring more of my culture and my community into the music. And so that was one of the things that was actually really special about collaborating with the Dessners and Nicole, is that they allowed me to do that. That's how Over the Rhine came to be. That's how the finale song, River 10 Feet Deep, came to be, is them making that space for me to pour more of this instrument into the music.
So in addition to Cincinnati, this film has a bunch of beautiful shots of South Dakota. Can you speak to filming there a little bit, and if there was a particular location in the Black Hills that you like shooting in the best?
My initial response to shooting in South Dakota was kind of the same response that Dandelion had when her friend Brandy passes his flyer to her. It's like, oh, what are we doing in South Dakota? It actually ended up being one of the most special places that I visited. I had an experience there when there's a scene where Dandelion is just looking over the Badlands. It was the first time that I had experienced pure silence, and it blew my mind, because I'm looking at this vast landscape and I'm hearing nothing, and it was magical. And so I will always keep that with me from shooting in South Dakota. That was really, really special.
Thank you.
Hi. I'm honestly not sure if you're the right person to be asking this question. But if we wanted to purchase this movie somehow, could we, to watch it at home?
Yeah, that's above my pay grade.
Or will it be somewhere?
It will be in theaters coming in a few months, and then IFC always puts their films on VOD, on physical media,
all I
I
need to
believe.
hear,
So
DVD, perfect.
it'll be there.
Okay.
Tell your friends to go
Learning
to
this.
see it in theaters, though.
Absolutely.
And then Isaac, last question.
Cool. Thank
We
you.
are running out of time.
Hi. The one question I wanted to ask you was, one thing that Dandelion captures beautifully is that dynamic between someone who has a complicated relationship with their parent, who might not support or entirely understand their artistic calling. And I wanted to ask about your approach to playing those scenes and kind of capturing that dynamic in Dandelion.
I mean, for me, I was blessed to have a very supportive family, which, is not always the case when you go to your parents and say, hey, I want to pursue, being an artist full time, especially once you're ready to go to college, because it's cute in high school. But once we're talking about spending thousands of dollars every year to study acting, girl, what are we doing? So thankfully, I had a family that was super supportive, but I think being in the community, hearing enough stories of that's not always the case. And I think just kind of understanding, I'm not a parent yet myself, but I have 7 nieces and nephews, and I want to see them have a happy, stable life. And I think that's what a lot of parents want for their children. You want them to be happy, but you also want them to be able to take care of themselves. And I think that the film really captured that struggle when your child is doing something and you know it brings them joy, but you also know it's part of like the reason why they don't quite have their shit together. So, you know, kind of trying to find the balance of like, I want you to be able to do this thing, but also you're getting older and like you gotta find stability. And so shooting that scene was, you know, me and Melanie just really tapped in and went there, and I just really felt what Dandelion was saying of like, no, I'm not selling out arenas, but I am making some type of living. Like these gigs are paying the bills and keeping the lights on. So even though she's still struggling, there still is something that is working. And I think that sometimes the tension of being an artist is like it's working, and then at the same time, it's not. And like, you're just so close. All you need is one break. You just need someone to see you and say, yes, absolutely, that person, but you're also so far. And I think capturing that dynamic between a parent and a child, I think Nicole really did a great job with that. And I think it rings very true to what I think a lot of us as artists have experienced in our own families.
Thank you so much.
I think film critics also get that experience. Most of our parents don't know what we do. Thank you for those lovely questions. I want to ask one last thing before we wrap. How do you hope audiences like come to this film when they leave? How do you hope they feel?
I hope that they feel a bit more willing to live more authentically as themselves, especially like the artists that are seeing it, you know, seeing Dandelion going through this journey of wrestling with, is there space for me? She walks into these spaces that are dominated by white men. She goes into a guitar shop and all over the wall is just white men. And like seeing her wrestling with, is there space for me? Is there space for my sound? Is there space for this look, for this instrument? And I think it's something that we as artists really have to be able to find the pride and the confidence and like the strength of knowing that you were made the way that you were for a reason. And it's a journey that I really had to go through with this film, because I've spent so much of my life hiding my singing voice and hiding that I write music. And so I went through that journey myself of like, why am I hiding? Like, yeah, this is my voice. This is how I sing. This is the instrument that I have. And so I hope that audiences, especially after seeing that finale song and seeing Dandelion kind of latching on to her power and who she is, I hope that audiences can do the same and walk out of here like with that, you know, river 10 feet deep, hot pink suit from Zara energy.
That's the energy I walk around with every day. So
Yes.
Take that energy, go make some art. Doesn't matter what it is, make some art. Instagram's art, it's all art.
That's right.
Yeah. Thank you all very much. Thank you.